program here at the University of Manchester. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a quick overview of the program. So I'll be sharing my screen. I assume now you can all see it, Paul?
Yes.
Yeah. And what I'm going to do is give you an overview of the program and then open up for questions. So it should take about a half hour to start. Paul and I really have to leave on time because we have a session at 3:15. So what I'm going to do is just give you a quick overview of the program. You'll get all the slides. There'll be other things there. So this is really kind of a way to think about it. The AMBS DBA program has been around for quite some time. It's focused on doctoral work, obviously. It falls within our doctoral programs. So it's not an executive program, it's a doctoral program. And it's aimed at individuals who are interested in the application of theory to practice at one level, but also discovery-based mixtures of theory and practice, which is kind of a guidance for evidence-based management practices. But that said, it is a scholarly degree. It is a research degree. It is a degree that falls within our doctoral programs. And as we would argue, and it's not just kind of us arguing about something which is good for us, but I think if you compare us to other DBA programs around the world, I would make an argument that we're probably the most academically rigorous of those. We did a review last year, about a year and a half ago, which led to some changes in the program. That was actually my role coming in, was to do that. And in doing that, we reviewed, dozens and dozens and dozens of other programs, and really think that our real differentiator is this kind of scholarly component of this. I'll come back to that as we go along. But we also have a kind of philosophical way of thinking about things at the school, and it's caught up in our tagline of original thinking applied. And in doing a DBA, you're doing original research. It isn't a consulting study. It isn't really a kind of corporate project. It's meant to be intellectually unique in some way. So you're really working on something which has a degree of originality to it. The second aspect is that there's some deep thinking here. It isn't just kind of the critical thinking that people kind of wax on about, but it goes beyond, policy reports and government reports and consulting reports and business projects. It involves significantly more thinking, significantly more integration of academic research, and this, I think, is one of the real differentiators, because the volume of things that have been done by people like me and other academics around the world, when you look at topical areas, is actually quite significant. It's not necessarily seen above the water in many ways, partially because some of it isn't fit for you in consumption in some sense. It's quite technical. But in addition, it's not something that makes it into the popular press in quite as readily, an available way that you would otherwise see, let's say, consulting reports. We don't do the sort of kind of promotion. We're not selling what it is that we're doing in the same way that McKinsey or Goldman Sachs would be selling what it is that they're doing, or Gartner or whoever. We don't have a direct line between our ideas and our financial bottom line. So there is this aspect of thinking which is there, which is quite difficult for some people. But different from the PhD is the applied component, and that is that ultimately this degree is focused on an application aspect, in the sense that it isn't that you're just studying an application, or that you are studying an application, but that ultimately what it is that you're doing, you have to kind of integrate into it an operationalization of what it is that you're doing. Many academic studies don't do this, because that isn't really kind of part and parcel of what it is that they do. It's up to the consultants and others in the world sometimes to take these academic ideas and to operationalize them in some way, shape, or form. So you can even look, for example, at things like the work and behavioral insights in the UK government on doing nudges and all sorts of other things like that. The academic research behind that is 30 years old. It takes a while for that stuff to flow through, and the DBA has an aspect where that flow through matters. So there's an application and an impact component to it. In terms of getting into the program, there are kind of all the usual things. You have to have the background degrees at sufficient level. We expect, but do not necessarily absolutely require a master's degree, but it's really preferable if you do. Minimum 6 years management experience. We do put emphasis on this. The average age of the DBA is probably late 30s. Most of them have this management experience. That's a big differentiator between a PhD degree, where the average age is probably 29. Spoken English, written English is critical because ultimately you have to write and defend a rather substantive document. Poor English language skills are a real detriment to this. So communication skills are critical. But you can meet all these requirements and still not get into the program, in the sense that these requirements are what I would call the base hygiene factors of being considered in the program. The real differentiators I'll talk about later on is the research proposal, your personal statement, and other things, because most of the people who apply to the program do meet the minimum requirements. And the value, let's say, of your bachelor's degree, if that occurred 15 years ago, is certainly going to be less compared to the experience that you have, simply because that's more salient and more current information. But you have to kind of at least prove you've met these requirements. The other aspect of the program is that we tend to be thematic. But in a general sense, okay? We tend to concentrate around specific themes, and part of the reason we concentrate around these specific themes is because we have a limited amount of human capital in the school. So even though we're a big school between 200-300 academics, we don't do everything, and we have some concentrations of research areas and some areas where we're thin. And also, as I'll show later on, you need to have a supervisor. You need to have a supervisory team. You need to be kind of integrated into the things that we're doing. And this has to be kind of around research areas. So we're organized around general divisions, accounting and finance, management science and marketing, innovation management and policy, people management and organizations. These are primarily internal organizational things, but it is the way we're organized. But the key is not necessarily these kind of big areas. It's actually sub areas. So, for example, I show here a few of the people management and organizations, but not all of them. So for example, international business, which is technically where the area where I sit, is in there. Leadership is in there. Emotions and well-being at work. We have organizational psychology. We have healthcare. We have lots and lots and lots of kind of groups within groups. But the key is to focus on those areas. So this allows us to kind of find kind of value synergies between the students that we've got, PhD and DBA students, but also between the faculty and those students. It makes it easier also in terms of coursework and other things. But one of the things that's also important to understand is that most work spans areas. So just to use myself as an example, my undergraduate degree is in psychology and applied mathematics. So I've done psychology, I've done computer science. My graduate degrees are a master's degree in public policy, an MBA in economics and statistics, and a PhD in economics. Yet I do work in governance, I do work in social responsibility, I have a position in faculty medicine. We tend to span lots of areas, and problems tend to span lots of areas. So what this means is it means that when you're looking, you're saying, well, I'm interested in innovation or I'm interested in entrepreneurship. Well, that actually potentially resides in all four areas to some degree. So you kind of have to search through and sort of kind of see where there's alignment. And this links back to potential supervisors. And I'll talk about that again. Okay. We have all this information on the main DBA webpage. But if there are any questions that kind of pop up, you can always ask us, as with everything that I'm saying here. The program is structured around residentials, at least in theory. Okay, so this year and last year, theory gets thrown out the window because nothing was physically being done on campus in a useful way. But it is a 4-year part-time program. The coursework is concentrated in the first 2 years mostly, obviously you move to try to complete the dissertation work in the second 2 years. We in theory have it structured around residentials. This year, we're still doing things online. Next year, assuming everything goes to form, there would be a series of residentials with online interactions in between those. The first and second year students attend the complete residentials. Third and fourth year students, they don't have to attend everything, but we do expect them to come onto campus. So you can think about it as one residential in term 1, and then a bunch of online work, another residential at the beginning of term 2, then a bit of online work, and as I'll show, then a doctoral conference, which occurs at, this year at the end of May, which is a 1-week event with faculty and doctoral students, both PhD and DBA, of various years. You get about 200 some people involved in this. And there's a whole series of things going on. This year we did it as 2 weeks online, but the idea is that it's more or less kind of 5 days face to face. The next year, my expectation is it would be blended in some way, but it would only be 1 week. That's the schedule that we have. So year 1, there would be an orientation period. I say half-day seminar, but it might not be. It might be 3 half-days or something like that. There's a bunch of different things that need to be done that's spread out. This would be done online. Then there would be the first residential, the coursework there. There's a course called Evidence-Based Practice Research, which is mainly you writing, a little bit of lecture, but mainly you writing to get you going on the writing part of your work. Economics and econometrics and statistics, research, theory, social research methods, which is a year-long course, which covers a bit of philosophy of science, various research methods, how to structure theory, etc. And then your supervisory meetings, face-to-face supervisory meetings, in addition to obviously what would be online meetings, which would occur during the year. The second residential, another methods course on qualitative methods, finishing up statistics, the second half of research theory and methods, and again, more supervisory meetings, right? So that kind of repeats itself. And then the doctoral conference closer to the end of the academic year. In year 2, again, repeats again, similar model. There's a big project, which is your literature project, which is a big written project, which you start. It says here 4 hours not assessed, but essentially part of that is covered in the residential. The rest of it is online, and you're working with your supervisors. Various electives that you would take, more supervisory meetings, obviously. In January, this finishes, the literature project finishes to some sense. You're effectively getting on with the writing of your dissertation. This is just a component of it. You start the pilot project, which is around data collection and other things, testing you're doing, a bit more elective work, and then more supervisory meetings. And again, there's all sorts of online stuff which goes on in between. In April, you present the pilot project, and then it's in June, July, but it might be late May, the doctoral conference again. And there are different requirements in the doctoral conference. Year 1, year 2, these change. And then year 3, you attend the residentials, but in a shorter period of time, because there are other things that we do. We have alumni there. We have different presentations. We have people, visitors from the outside. So third and fourth year students, the expectation is that they come, they meet their supervisors and interact with the first and second year students who are sort of coming into the system. And then the doctoral conference, again, you don't have to necessarily attend absolutely everything, but the expectation is you're physically there. And then working on the finalization of your work and getting prepared to defend what it is that you have. Now, the key in the program is the written dissertation. So the coursework is necessary, but not sufficient. The key is the dissertation. Okay, you can do all the coursework, do very well in the coursework, and not get through the dissertation. The dissertation is the key. So you really have to focus on the dissertation. It can be done in a number of different formats. One format is you kind of do a kind of holistic document, which might be like a book. And the other model is that you write kind of 3 kind of journal-like articles. We normally say for the DBAs to focus on this because the journal style is more amenable to PhD work, but also more difficult to do within a window of 4 years. Should be between 60, 70,000 words, but the reality is that it's not 60 to 70,000 words. It's more like 30,000, 40,000, 35,000, 45,000, because you have appendices, tests, other things that are in the document, appendices, etc. But you're really talking about, a substantive document of 150 pages plus, which for many people is very difficult to write. It's easy to write maybe 150 pages that isn't very good, but writing 150 pages that is good and passable is really hard. And this is going to be externally examined by independent examiners, so it's got to be good. And it has to cover the usual suspects: importance of the topic, theoretical background and basis that comes out of your literature project as an example, the frameworks that you're actually testing, the sampling, the methods, how you're doing what you're doing, questionnaires, surveys, databases, whatever it is that you're doing, the results, and then conclusions and implications. And in a sense, there's an aspect of this which looks similar to any doctoral dissertation. The DBA adds on a little additional kind of twist to this, in that you need to kind of have an operationalization plan here. It isn't just kind of, okay, here's what I've done, I've tested it, this seems to be what I find. You actually have to kind of go that extra step to sort of say, okay, well, how do companies use this? How do government policy divisions use this? How is this applied? And how would I put that part of it together to sort of say this is the practice implications of everything that I'm doing. So in that sense, it's a bit additional to that. Given this, the word size of the dissertation, what that means is you probably write less on this than you would see in something like a PhD dissertation, because you've got to write more on this. So there is this application component which is in there. Yeah. But we do other things. There are all sorts of other things going on at the school. We open up seminar series. We have seminar series all over the school. These are academic, but you'd be surprised at how practical many of them are. The group I'm in international business, we do one every Wednesday. Next week, we have a woman from the University of Geneva. Last week, we had somebody from St. Gallen in Switzerland. The week before that, we had somebody from Old Dominion in the United States. Week before that, we had somebody from New York University, and on and on. That's kind of what it is we do. All of these are available to you. Because of the pandemic, we've moved the stuff almost completely online. What that means is that this is available pretty much everywhere now. The model where academics would fly around the world and present their stuff at different universities, that is certainly on hold for the foreseeable future. And for many people, they don't want to do it, so I don't want to necessarily fly to a place just to give a seminar. So this is available, and once you know your research areas, you can see where this is going on. The school has webinar series. We have original thinking webinars. They go about every 2 weeks. Very practical, sort of kind of externally focused things. We'll probably get 100, 200 plus people to those things. Some of those are physically done at the school now, but they're also broadcast, so they're available to people. We have our own mixture of seminars that and external people we bring in. During the doctoral conference earlier this year, we had Jerry Davis from University of Michigan. We had Hendrik Grev from Singapore INSEAD, from INSEAD in Singapore. We have all sorts of other individuals who are there. After this session, we have Andy Van de Ven, who's a professor at University of Minnesota. In January, we have Ed Freeman, who is professor at University of Virginia. We have lots of these types of things, and those are all online. But these are academics who really have really understand nature of practice. And then we have a mentoring scheme. So what we do is we assign alumni mentors to people. This helps them through the program, so they have somebody to kind of talk to. Given that the program is kind of at a distance and it's part-time, you don't quite have the support structure you have when you have physical, face-to-face full-time programs. We started a mentoring program. This is an individual, generally speaking, who will be kind of not completely co-located. So we have a student from Ghana this year and one from Nigeria. Both of the mentors, I believe, are from Ghana. One student in Germany, his mentor is in Germany as well, not in the same city, and on and on and on and on. So this allows you to kind of have a bit of a support structure as well, in terms of the things that you're doing. And then there's kind of other things which are related to the alumni that we do with the residentials and other things like that. Now, that's kind of a very, very quick review of the program. The application process is a little clunky, but there's aspects of it which are just very, very standard. You just have to have stuff to prove things, and then kind of what I would say is probably the real key part. But all of our doctoral programs, everything kind of goes through the university. So you have to kind of work. You have to look at the kind of the application process. So the university is the portal by which this occurs. But we have our own guidance on this. Okay, so you really you follow our guidance, but you submit the stuff through the university. It's just how it works. You go on to this site to log in, register, log in, and you go onto a pull down menu, and you can find the DBA, and that's where you put your application in. And then these are the things that we require, and you can see it's telling you what the bits and pieces are, so you can review that. But so you have to create a login, and you have to remember that the deadlines. So there are two deadlines here. One deadline is January 15th. The other is 15th of April. These are drop dead dates. We won't take anything later than this. So if you miss 15 January, you still have 15 April. You miss 15 April, you have to wait till the next 15th January. It's also important when you look at this not to sort of say, well, I can, I'll start on January 1st. I can have everything done by January 15th. Unless you're extraordinary, that's not going to work. And you'll see as I go through some other bits and pieces of this. So you really have to start kind of this process, quite soon, in a real form. We have no scholarship funding. So, it is what it is. It's a fully paid program. Somebody else can pay, obviously, company or other group, that doesn't matter to us. You have to have proof, so you have to make sure you can get your documents. Now, for people who've gotten their degrees many years ago, sometimes this is problematic, but talk to Paul, go through the system. We deal with these things on an ongoing basis. You're doing this application for the first time, but we've seen many of these. So there are things where we can help you. Think about your area of work. I'm going to talk about this in a second, but you have to think about who you might be working with at the school, because we have to assign supervisors, but we don't really assign supervisors. The supervisors sort of pick. And so you have to really sell yourself to potential supervisors. When you add the references in, we would like, if you can, it's not necessary, but it helps if you can get an academic reference. And the key here is not that we need the academic reference because we think the academic reference is more valuable from a standpoint of your capability. That's not necessarily the case. But academics understand doctoral programs. Academics understand what you would go through. Somebody who hasn't gone through a doctoral program doesn't necessarily know what it is like, and it is different. It is indeed different. The idea of working independently, the idea of how you interact with supervision, all of these things are very, very, very different from normal experience. Everybody finds aspects of that kind of stressful. And so somebody who could look at you and sort of say, yeah, they can deal with the issues. That helps us. That helps us. It just removes any question marks. And here's really where the key is: clear, articulated research proposal, personal statement. Now, I'm going to talk about this in a second. This becomes a real key. Because this is the big differentiator. If everybody who applies to the program fundamentally meets most of the requirements in some way, shape, or form, what differentiates an individual in the minds of the committee evaluating them? And it's this research proposal. So that's kind of the main body. I'll talk about the research proposal in a minute. If you have questions, you come to us. Don't necessarily assume something. Just ask. That's what we're here for. So the first thing you need to think about in the proposal, okay, is situating the work. Where does your work fit? Okay, and this is where these thematic areas again come back into play, because you can sort of say, okay, here are the things that existed at the University of Manchester and the business school. Here are the things I'm really interested in doing. Where's the alignment? Okay, and the reality is that we won't really align to you as much as you're going to have to align to us to some extent, simply because we're a bit of a fixed entity in terms of the people who are doing the work, the research work, the supervision, really want to be a subject expert to be able to help you. They don't want to try to be unknowledgeable. It doesn't help them. So where does your work fit? In other words, where does it fit in terms of these divisions? And there will be another session on the 4th of November. Paul will inform you about it, which is a general doctoral session. I can't attend that, but as part of that, there will be the ability to meet some of the people in these areas, so you can get a better picture of what it is that's in these areas. And get a feel for this. So first question, you sort of say, well, kind of where's the core of what it is I do? Yeah, you might be doing work which spans management science and innovation management. Okay, you might be doing something on data analytics, and it might link between what some people are doing here and some people are doing here. That's fine. That's not a problem. But ultimately, you have to ask the question, well, where is my main supervisor coming from? Which of these two is kind of number one and which is number two? And then you look at the underlying areas. So you look at the work, the more specific types of things. So you might sort of say, well, I'm interested in governance. Well, governance occurs here in the International Business Group. It also turns out governance occurs in accounting and finance. All right, so you might look at this and say, well, maybe I should think about, which of these is going to be my core area, but you do need that primary area, and then focus on these keywords. all right, because these keywords are key. Kind of a bit of a pun, I guess. The key words are the ones that the faculty have chosen to link work to them. Okay, and keywords actually become important because if you look at this one here, leadership, leader member exchange, if you do not know what leader member exchange is, but you want to work on leadership, then you've really got to think about it, because leader member exchange is actually an area of work, a theoretical structure, which is big in the leadership area. Okay, you look up here, you look at and say, okay, well, I'm interested in global value chains. Okay, fine. Who in our faculty is doing this sort of work? Then we can link all that up. So you actually have to pick the keywords. Ultimately, in your proposal, we ask you to pick keywords. So this narrows it down kind of even further. But you have to think about the nature of supervision. Okay, so there's kind of a matching process here, right? In the sense that the student is the applicant sitting here and sort of saying, well, here's a bunch of faculty that I think I might fit with. Okay? And faculty are over here, and they might see the students and sort of say, well, who might I fit with? Okay, so there's kind of a matching process going on. And we structure it around primary and secondary supervisors. So the key is to think, okay, well, who's really a primary supervisor here? Because the primary supervisor should be kind of in an area where you are more tightly aligned. But also the primary supervisor has to be at the University of Manchester. Right? So what that means is that you really have to think long and hard about, the primary supervisor, because that's a Manchester person. The secondary supervisor can be from someplace else. Supervising two people. One of the second supervisors is in Finland. The other one is at University College London. The fact that somebody might not necessarily be at Manchester is okay with us. We don't have a problem with that. But that really has to kind of link to your primary supervisor. So the primary supervisor could look at this and say, well, who might be a good secondary supervisor for this person? And they might say, well, look, I've got a colleague at the University of Toronto. I've got a colleague in South Africa. So for example, that seminar series I told you, we've got somebody from South Africa giving a talk in a couple of weeks. We know lots of people, and therefore we can kind of find that. But here's where the key is. You have to kind of go into the website and look at people. And it's not necessarily obvious who you should be looking at. So you pretty much have to do it in the old-fashioned way, where you have to kind of start going in and scanning and looking at this. And the thing you have to understand is also that the website is kind of a bit academic, in the sense that it says a lot about our academic background, but it doesn't necessarily always say a lot about all the other things that we're doing in our lives. But it becomes important for your proposal, because if you turn around and you sort of say, well, look, I'm interested in working in this area, let's say global value chains, and I want to work with Divinity. And then I look at your research proposal and you actually do not cite any of my own research, any of the work I've done. Well, that's not going to look very good. So when you think about the supervisors, you have to think about the nature of the work that they're doing. And when you pull your research proposal together, you have to think about making sure that what you're doing is you're citing the work, you're incorporating the work, you're indicating to those people that you have read what they have done. So that they'll actually, be more positively disposed to you. Now, we recommend that you try to think about this, and then also that you potentially talk to people. Now, there are a couple ways to do this, and there's a way we would suggest you do this. Okay, one way to do it is to just simply email the faculty member directly and sort of say, well, I'm interested in what you're doing. I'm going to apply to this program. I want to do this. Would you be my supervisor? I would venture to guess that in 99% of the cases, that email doesn't work. It barely will get read, probably. I get 2 of those emails a day. And my response to it is no. The way you do this is to have a much more carefully laid out thing that says, dear Professor X, I have read your work. I'm interested in working in this area. I've started to work on my research proposal. Here's a short executive summary, kind of 1 page of my research proposal. Here's what I'm thinking of doing, et cetera, et cetera. You have to kind of stroke the ego, work it a bit, but also show that you've actually you're just not looking for a supervisor. You're looking for somebody to work closely with you. So you have to kind of think about that. But I would even recommend that if when you're doing that, you let us actually make the contact. So what you do is just sort of say, okay, look, here's what I've been doing. Here's what I want to do, and then we can generate the contact. Because there are other aspects of this which you may not know, and the other aspects would be, for example, we have limits on the number of students we can supervise. You might find somebody who you think is absolutely perfect, but they don't have any freedom to take any more students on because we have limits. They may be on sabbatical, they may not even physically be around, and on and on and on and on. But it may also be that even if they aren't going to be your supervisor, you could talk to them and they could say, look, here's another colleague of mine, who I think you could really work with. That's kind of how the process works. The other aspect of this is you can apply, you don't have to necessarily have that supervisor ex ante. It helps to talk to people. It also helps, for example, to talk to alumni and other people who might have gone through the program. Okay, and we'll help in that process. That's part of our job. So the research proposal, which is kind of the key here, is only 3,000 words or approximately. You're really not locking yourself into anything. You're not saying, well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do A, B, C, D, E, and that's how it's all going to work, because you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you need to know, and therefore the research proposal is just kind of your first go at kind of starting that conversation about the nature of your work. But we're looking at it and we're saying, is it well written? Is it referencing the literature? It's not just kind of talking about consulting studies and 7 S's and all sorts of kind of stuff that nobody really uses. You're just not going to get anywhere with that. It's going to show kind of intellectual depth, the fact that you've looked at the literature, you looked at the work of some of the people who you might be working with, and you have a way of articulating how you're going to study something, even though you might not necessarily get into the absolute nitty-gritty detail of this. It helps to do this. This is why it's important, to look at what the requirements are, but also to spend a lot of time writing and rewriting and showing it to people. If you have academic friends and colleagues, show it to them. If you're talking to some people, it's fine. Academics are very good at this. So even if you have people who were prior instructors or something, you can always go with them. You have to pick keywords. You have to structure those keywords in a way, and that allows us to be able to start zeroing in on different types of things like that. You also have to think about this contribution to practice part. So these are our kind of guidelines of what it is you need to do. So you could talk to an academic member of staff. You could talk to alumni. If you want to talk to alumni, we could potentially put you in touch with some. We'll have a session closer to the end of November where we'll kind of have an alumni panel, a student panel who you talk to. So we can do all that for you. So with that, I will stop. It's a bit of a whiz through this, but you will get the slides. If you want also recording of what's there, but there's also stuff on the website.